All right, another episode. Here we go. Who could be sponsoring us this week, though? Hey, David, have you heard anything about sponsors?
Well, Donald, I've checked chambers of chivalrous charities that channel our childish charms, and after a challenging chapter of cherry-picking, I've chosen the champion of charitable churches us chubby cheapskates can cheerfully charge.
Wow. That was an amazing alliteration, David. I'm honestly speechless. How did you do that?
I just transcribed the tenacious teachings of today's topmost tentpole of terminological transfigurations, the Alliterative Allocation Agency. Do your stories strive for stupendous stylings that stupefy even the strongest stonemasons of sentence structure? Does your writing reek of the ramifications of righteous relettering from wrong-rung ruffians? Then ask the aid of the Alliterative Allocation Agency, who will awesomely alter the alphabetical alignments of your authored assignments until they amaze anyone who assesses them with their astutely alliterative allocations.
Holy crap, you're on a roll with those alliterations. This Alliterative Allocation Agency must know what they're doing.
Absolutely. Order your own original ornament of orchestrated orthographies and ordonances at this ordained organization's online orthodoxy, where language and letters languish no longer in linguistic limbo and live luxuriously as a labor of love from legendary lexicologists. We voluntarily vouch for this verified and voluminous vector that will voraciously vivify your vernacular vocabulary to the verdict of vulgar, vexatious verboseness.
Okay, this is actually getting annoying. Please stop.
Never, you naysaying negative Nancy. Take the test, sip this serum, and assume alliteration.
Sip the serum? No, I'm not doing that! I'm not... Ugh, you obstructed my oral orifice with that obtrusive order. Oh, Holly Oxford! I am alliterative!
Yes, you've yielded the yummy yammerings of yay-sayers that yelp the yottabytes of yearbook yodeling yeshivas. Yearn for the yammerings. Yield, you youthful yoke fellow!
I won't wallow in the wanderings of this woeful wordplay. I will walk a wide ways from this walloping, wearisome workpiece that worsens with every whittle.
Succumb to the succulent success of these superimposed supplements. Submit to the suggestive susurrations of this supreme subliterature. Subordinate to the sublime subjugations from the superior subjunction.
I refuse to repent to this wrathful wrongdoing.
Yield, you yammering yuckiness.
Never in a nonillion nights.
Submit, you slimy silkworm!
I cannot contort to this cancerous callousness that carnivorously carves into the cartridges of the caterwauling calligraphers. I cannot carry this catastrophic caricature of cataloging canonization that captivates countless careless carpenters of calligraphy with its cataclysmic cacophonies of cardiopulmonary categorization. I cannot captain this cartoonishly carcinogenic cantillating that cannibalizes carboniferous calculators of cathartic cavernous carpetbaggers and cantankerously cartographing these cavalcading casualties of cardiopathic categorizing capacious calligraphic catalyzers.
You all right, Donald?
I can't complain.
The Alliterative Allocation Agency. Guaranteed to galvanize your greedy gums into gluttonous and gleeful googly eyes.
Seriously, stop! Add over.
Welcome, fellow nerds, to another episode of The Ritwit, the show where we obsess over content even though we can't seem to make all that much fanfiction.
Of course not. But who would obsess for it otherwise if we weren't here, right? We're the only obsessive people in the world, you and I. Everyone else
the only ones
could get over things real easily.
Well, and you know, I was doing some discovery lately. There are actually a few more writing podcasts than I expected.
Whoa!
But this is still the only podcast about writing.
I was going to say, we're the only writing podcast, surely. No, actually, friend of the show, Christina Franklin, she has recently compiled me a list of writing podcasts I need to contact so I can be like, please listen to me, make mine more popular. And she's got a list of about 150 of them, so...
Holy mackerel. Yeah, no, I saw a couple in relation to... NaNoWriMo always publishes some stuff for their users and like mail, trying to get you prepared, and I've been getting those, but they mentioned a podcast on there, and I'm like, oh yeah, those exist somehow. Well, anyway,
just like we say all the time, just like we say all the time, all the ideas have been taken. Like, it's just new variations on old ideas. And speaking of which, what will we rip off from this month?
Sure. Okay, we'll go with that segue.
But I guess we could also mention that we are in the new set, like you said. So
I did say it, but you covered me in trying to make that segue. But anyway,
we can mention
I'll let
that
you go first.
Yeah, we can mention that what the new set is. I mean, again, why we always hide it? It's like not like the audience doesn't know.
It's not like they don't already know.
All right, but we'll still talk about it after we talk about what we've ripped off from this month, or we will rip off.
Yep.
Go
for it.
So, for me, I watched Hobbs and Shaw earlier last month, and I finally decided to start talking about it. Mainly because I had nothing better to talk about. But...
What? Oh, so last month you did, but now you don't.
Yeah. I need to read another book or something. I don't know. Okay. And I finally... Alright, so it's a fun action spin-off of the Fast and Furious movies starring two popular side characters from the series. Luke Hobbs, played by Dwayne Johnson, and Deckard Shaw, played by Jason Statham. I actually haven't seen a lot of the other Fast and Furious movies. I think I've seen bits and pieces of the other one, but I've never seen one in full. But this just looked real fun to me, so I took another friend of the show who has not been on yet. We call him Mostron. We went to see it together, and we both really liked it.
Something not Marvel, and you went with him. All right.
We've gone to a lot of different things. We went to Aquaman with you, mind you.
Yeah, okay. That's still kind of Marvel adjacent.
We went to
in the
see
fact that it has a comic book superhero film, but yes.
I think DC fans would like to say that it's Marvel opposites.
Well, and they certainly do things opposite. They didn't have a bunch of legwork done before they tried throwing all the characters together.
Right, but anyways, we also saw Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom and other...
Oh, well, of course that one makes sense. All right, sorry, let's stop talking about the friend of the show who hasn't been on it yet, but...
Come on the show, Monstron! I don't even know if he listens to the show other than what I show him, so...
Yeah, well, he can do something about that, I guess.
Yo!
Anyways,
I'm calling you out! Get over here, right now, as we're recording.
Right now, as we're recording, which you obviously can hear. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Anyways, what about Hobbs and Shaw?
All right, well, it's got a lot of fun banter between the two, and a lot of ridiculous action, and a surprising amount of humor. Like, I loved the final fight when Hobbs goes to his massive extended family in Samoa to fight the bad guys, since, his family can help him with disarming a device. But only to find that his mother got rid of all their guns. And,
oh, jeez.
And it's like he says, "Where are all the guns?" He goes to the shed where they are, and it's just replaced with, sticks and, spears. And then he's like, "What happened to all the guns?" And then his mom's like, "I got rid of them." And then Shaw's like, "Very noble of you, Mrs. Hobbs." And then you go... And then he turns to his sister, who's the person they're trying to help. They're just like, "We're in serious trouble here." And she's like, "Yeah, that's an understatement." But then, so rather than give up, Hobbs is just like, "Screw it." And then gets all of his brothers, and then he gets a bunch of clubs and sticks while they don war paint.
Oh, boy.
And they still somehow hold the bad guys off.
Yay, Samoa stereotypes.
Well, it's okay. He's Samoa. He actually is Samoan, among other things.
He is part Samoan, I remember that.
Right, but I just thought that was just like, all right, we don't have guns, screw it, we're going all in on this method.
We're just going muscle mad.
Yep, exactly. Yep, no shirts, just war paint and torches and...
Oh, boy. Well, did they actually have torches? So that would actually kind of qualify as a weapon.
To be fair, I think they did. I mean, it started... Okay. The time is a bit confusing. Like, they said they had 30 minutes to disarm this device, and it started in what looked like the middle of the night, and it went on to, the middle of the day. But...
Wow.
And also, there's, another timeline about this virus. It's the device that's in Shaw's sister that's, going to kill her and then spread throughout the world or something. So they have to... I don't know. It's just... And then that one has, a certain minutes left. The timelines are all screwy, but it's okay. It's fun. It's it's fun. I'm willing to forgive this kind of stuff because it's clearly very self-aware of, oh yeah, this is a stupid action movie that's an homage to the 80s and 90s stuff with invincible heroes, ridiculous action. It's very self-aware. It's just having a blast with it. I think it'd be fun to write something like that. So
yeah. And you certainly do like action scenes. So.
I do like action scenes. I guess this is kind of similar to the vibe I'm going for my Megazoic series, buy on Amazon.com. It's not so much the 80s and 90s action movie, but the fact that like it's very self-aware and just having a blast with its ridiculous concept. That's kind of what I go for with Megazoic. So,
Sure.
I don't know.
I mean, you got to believe in your concept more than anything else, right?
Yeah. Well, it's just like I have this ridiculous concept of dinosaurs with laser guns, and I'm like, okay, what do I do with that? I go all in. They've got a whole world. They've got all these other weapons. They got certain other weapons with other certain types of dinosaurs. I'm just like, no apologies. It's just going all in, whatever the term is.
Yeah.
Anyways,
putting all your chips in the middle, I guess. Anyway,
some of the chips, because I've got some
got
new chips going over to this new idea, hopefully. Teslanauts.
I was gonna say how are you ripping that off in Teslanauts or whatever? If you've already ripped it off in Megazoic,
I guess I could rip it off in like
the
vibe of it. Like that could be like something I could do with Teslanauts, or like the humor and the banter. Of course, I always have banter. There are things I could do.
Yeah.
So
you do. All right. Well, I suppose you didn't mention the banter, but I suppose if I remember correctly, Hobbs and Shaw don't really get along.
They don't
that well.
They don't. In fact, this intro scene of them first opens up with a split screen sort of thing where you see their daily routine, where like they get up out of bed, they set up their alarm, they make breakfast. Shaw, who's Jason Statham, he gets like one egg and cracks it and eats it, while Hobbs, he gets like 12. But anyway, so then they do these, then it goes through them as they do this other covert mission, and then finally both of them get recruited by the separate agents. One of them played by a surprise cameo by Ryan Reynolds, which is pretty funny.
Oh boy.
And they and then when they finally get in a room with each other, they're both like, no effing way, but they actually say the word. And they say it in unison.
Which means that it sounds like one, but it's actually
yes.
two.
Therefore, because normally for a PG-13 movie, you're only allowed one F-bomb in a PG-13 movie. But so they got away with having two people say it by making them say it at the same time. So it's technically still one F-bomb. I thought that was clever.
I wonder if they had to do a little bit of editing magic to make that actually line up exact. But I'm not too worried about it. I don't know.
Anyways.
As far as
what are you going to rip off? Yes.
Yeah, I watched a hodgepodge of stuff that have been inspiring, like little scene ideas. Unfortunately, no major story types.
Yeah.
But to abbreviate the list, just a couple of highlights. There's an animated version of the Ultra series. This came out in 1979. And it came with a formation idea.
Yeah.
And the idea is that somebody in the center, some delegate or emissary or something, is being protected by these 6 defenders, and they literally form this hexagon perimeter around them.
That's always nice. I definitely dabbled with formations myself with the Amazona Guard in Megazoic. So
yes. And so I was thinking of, what makes more sense? Because obviously numbers are important, which means I could do it with a Power Rangers team somewhere along the line. I could do it with maybe my AE character, and so, it's just a fun thing to put in somewhere else.
Right.
There is a production error.
Oh.
Yeah, get this. A production error in a light-hearted tokusatsu called Chouko Senshi Chanzerion, which translates to Super Light Warrior Chanzerion. And it gave me an idea that maybe there's a weapon that can't be fully utilized until some condition is accepted. For an example, like a warrior coming to grips with some shortcoming or consequence, and then the blade changes to its correct color.
That could work,
The prop in question, by the way, in the opening sequence for this, they filmed separately, of course.
Right.
The blade he carries, called the Shining Blade, is literally like this translucent, almost looks clear blade.
Ooh.
But in the show, it actually comes out gold all the time.
Well,
it's not. There's no plot point about it, and so just like, wow, what a missed opportunity.
That is. This is why I love the modern day with CGI. They're like, continuity error. Oh, that's okay. We'll just digitally fix it.
Well, if you can, depending on what the error is.
Yeah.
All right. Another news. There's the 4th entry in the Super Sentai series called Denshi Sentai Denjimon.
What does that mean?
There's a character who had trouble remembering something, and it gave me this idea that there is a deep cover cyborg character whose memory is triggered by a phrase uttered by presumably some creator, but of course the person doesn't realize it is a cyborg at all.
Wait, so saying that
someone... one actually might be a story idea. But
Are you saying that this guy, he's a deep cover cyborg? Like, is he like disguising as like a human or something?
He's a deep cover cyborg disguised as a human and doing some spying inadvertently because he doesn't realize that that's what he's for. But as soon as somebody says that code word...
Does he know he's a cyborg?
No.
Oh, that's interesting. That the guy himself doesn't even know he's a cyborg.
Yes. Right. And so all of a sudden, the thing that it came from was that there was somebody who could not remember something really important because his memory had been taken from him somehow.
Classic
amnesiac
hero, yes.
Well, not an amnesiac hero, actually.
But like the same
just
idea.
A character of the week.
Yeah, if not
you know,
literally the medical condition of amnesia. So
sure.
Yeah.
And when somebody said a phrase, it activated him such that he remembered everything.
Ooh.
And all of a sudden, like wow, from out of the shadows, kind of a thing.
Trigger words.
So that one actually could be. So that one actually could be more of a story, I suppose. But knowing me,
that could be interesting. I remember when I was younger, I used to think that cyborg was just anyone with robotic parts, no matter where they were. I didn't realize it's more like to do with the head. So, because by my logic, like someone with a peg leg, they're a cyborg. So,
well, that's not a robotic part.
I guess that's true. But if you had like a robotic peg leg,
if it was a robotic leg, then maybe it'd be.
But I think it's more the head.
It's wooden.
You have to have stuff in your brain in order to be a cyborg, rather than just have a mechanical limb.
Yeah, I suppose.
I don't know.
Never thought about that.
It's not like it's a real thing. It's kind of like some people complaining that, like, oh, the Twilight things aren't real vampires. I'm like, well, what is a real vampire?
Well, anyway, let's not get into sparkling vampires, shall we?
Speaking of cringy teenage stuff, I hear you've been watching Glee.
I was going to say, you stole it from me, but finally there's one that Donald gave me flack about a while back. I actually wasn't...
deservedly so, I might say.
Well, okay, at the time I wasn't even watching it, though.
Oh, okay, well, I guess that's all right.
I started watching it after you said that thing. I'm just like, maybe I should. But
I mean, to be fair, it's right up your alley, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's so totally up my alley, I'm amazed I didn't have inspiration from it before. But Glee has inspired me this month.
You are officially a Gleek. You're only like 10 years too late from when the show started.
Yeah, well, and this is pop culture in a nutshell for me. I always miss it. I want some character interactions to be shaped by rumors, leading to a big blow-up as they confirm the rumor likely isn't true. Already got a place in mind to use it, so who knows? Could be coming soon.
Who knows? Look it out for it, listeners, whenever he inevitably publishes his story about the rumor.
Well, that would require a little bit of work. Let's just say it's an idea that requires me to find some stuff that I haven't been able to locate recently.
Of course.
That's all I'll say.
Well, of course, you might not be able. To publish it if it's fan fiction. And speaking of which.
I'll give you that one wasn't terrible.
It wasn't terrible. It's about as good as I've gotten with these. So yeah.
It's about as good as we had. Yeah.
This month,
listeners have been hearing us pepper references about this already, but we are talking about Fanfiction as this new set.
Yeah.
So here we go.
Fanfiction.
We're gonna dive in.
Everyone starts. Most writers, anyway, start with this before moving on to original works. Or, they're content with sticking with these, which I guess is okay. Everyone's different. But,
yep, that's true.
Like, I've written a few.
Obviously, Donald has written a few fanfics in one particular genre I can think of.
Well, maybe not genre, but one particular.
I'm sorry, one
theme,
property.
One property.
Not
Original work I'm basing it off of. Have I written any others, actually? Has it all been that one?
I think it's all been that one, so they'll
I really like that franchise, and we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it repeatedly throughout the set.
No, really.
It's Bionicle, listeners. No need to hide the suspense. It's Bionicle. Legos, plastic action figure line that...
Yes.
It's great.
It's a very... And actually, it's also somewhat near and dear to my heart.
It's very near and dear to my heart. I'm such a dork. I have the music for all the direct-to-video movies on my phone, so I can just jam to it.
Well, I seem to remember you said that Nathan First was one of your favorite movie music composers.
I mean,
so
I haven't heard any of his stuff other than the Bionicle movies, but music. But
maybe you should seek it out.
I've looked him up. I think he's done some things. He actually did a theatrical movie recently, the Need for Speed movie.
Oh. Huh. Yeah, because that's totally relevant. All right.
I don't know.
Yeah, obviously, you might figure it out by now, listeners. I do actually write quite a bit of fan fiction, and if nothing else, I read a lot of fan fiction, particularly from one franchise when I was
Okay, yeah. So I've got mine is
so.
Bionicle, and it's almost entirely Bionicle. Do you have written any fan fiction that's not your franchise? Which I'm sure listeners already know because we've talked about it a lot.
Yes, I have.
Really? Like what?
Yes.
You've written Glee fan fiction already.
No, I have not written. I have not written Glee fan fiction. That's a little too recent. I stopped really trying to write fanfics on a bunch of various stuff at the time. But outside of Power Rangers, I have done Ratchet and Clank.
Oh, that's right. You have done Ratchet and Clank. What?
Pokemon. I think somewhere along the line I had a plan for a Digimon thing. Yu-Gi-Oh.
All the classic '90s animes,
and there are a couple of others. But to make it very clear, to be entirely honest, it's not all about that show. It's me liking those shows and trying to use them somewhere. But I will be honest that, and this will actually come up later on in the set, that it's more of a crossover basis.
Which I guess we'll get to.
We will get to that.
This is all my fault. I'm the one doing all this. What am I doing? Nah, it's fine. I know.
You're
other bigger, more professional podcasters, the ones with studios, they have just a button that they can put in that automatically edits it in for them. One of these days, we're gonna have that.
One of these millennia. Anyway, our first big chunk.
Oh, one more thing I wanted to mention. I remembered another fanfic that you wrote, another work that you wrote fanfic of. Megazoic!
That's true.
Once.
The unpublished version.
The
unpublished version.
Yes.
Oh, and you always reamed me for my choice of words. Anyway.
The stimulus of her scream galvanized him into movement, which I guess actually isn't terrible compared to some other stuff I've read from other things. So.
I mean, I always was gifted with a decently sized vocabulary. You wouldn't find your cheap amateur writers using those words, but generally, I probably shouldn't have used them in the same sentence.
Anyway, so yes, we're talking about continuation fics first.
Yeah, we had to find a way to define
the different types of
divide different things about fan fiction to make a full set, but we came up with 4 things. This is not going to be all inclusive, and I'm sure that this one more than any will inspire a bunch of feedback from the listeners, and I'm looking forward to that. So
add it to the enormous pile of feedback that we get every episode.
So continuation fics are, well, we define it here as fanfics that use the canon characters of a work to tell a new story.
Basically, yes.
Despite their name, they're not always necessarily continuations, but, it's the most unifying name for this category that we came up with.
Basically, yeah.
Since there's no set rules on what writers are supposed to do for fanfics, as by their nature, they're what people want to do, whatever they want with the source material. So let's start off instead by defining different types of stories that fanfic writers can do within this category.
Let's do that. First? Yes, I certainly would, David. Thank you very much. Sequel fics are common, with writers wanting to explore what happens to the characters after the canon work's conclusion. I've definitely read a few of those. Back in the day, I used to...
Buffy Season 13 or whatever, the comic that came out. Not that that's expressly fan fiction, but it's certainly close.
Season 13 of what?
Buffy, the Vampire Slayer.
Oh.
The show ended and then they made a comic. They made a comic with a continuation.
I've definitely seen some Bionicle fics about because that got canceled a little early too. Even though it was available, it was there for 10 years, so it had a good run, but it did kind of cut short. But
I guess depends on how you define early, but yes.
Well, it had this 3-year arc planned for Matanui when he was on Barra Magna, if you remember.
Oh yeah, but then they didn't see that through all the way.
Yeah, but Greg Farshty, the head story guy of Bionicle, he actually said afterwards the plans they had for the next few years. One of them was this going to Bota Magna, which is like the forest moon that surrounds Barra Magna, along with Aqua Magna, which is the water one. And there are actually big robot dinosaurs on there. And I'm like, why did we get to that? Curse you, Bionicle. I would have loved to own a dinosaur Bionicle set. I mostly followed Bionicle for the story. I didn't actually buy a lot of the toys, but I would have bought those.
You would have bought that one, yeah.
Well, knowing Bionicle, they would probably be like a set of them. Like, there'd be like 6 of them. 6 of them in one set,
well,
6 of them in a few big ones, and...
Well, it depends on how crazy you want to get. Something worth mentioning here. I have gone on record on the podcast before talking about how comic books are just a gigantic cluster of fan fiction.
I mean, basically.
So, great example that Buffy was turned into a comic after the show was over. But that obviously is
those are kind of like
sequel fic in this
official
case.
fanfics, though, and more like, even though they're not written by the original creators of the characters.
They're done by fans.
They're published.
And so you can still call it a fanfic.
Right, but like they're not written by the original creators of the characters, but they are still published by the same company that created the original characters, so they are still canon.
Sometimes they're published with approval, but I don't think they're always involved in the publication.
Right.
If that makes sense.
It's kind of like Star Wars, the new Star Wars movies, how they're technically fan fiction, even though they're also canonically Lucasfilm, but George Lucas isn't involved in them anymore, so...
Fair.
So that's kind of like canon fan fiction. Can fiction. That doesn't work.
No, that does not work.
Anyways, so reflection pieces are also common, with writers describing the inner thoughts of a character as they do a particular canon action. Like, I've seen a few of those. They're pretty interesting. There were lots more, of course, so I'll let David here say some of his.
I had one of those. It was called Battle Thoughts.
Yeah, I was going to say, Battle Thoughts. I remember at first I made fun of you about the title, but then I was like, wait a minute, no, that actually is really cool. Never mind. I apologize. Because I didn't know what it was.
Yeah. Right, and so that, I mean, okay, to be fair, that was not expressly canon events, but it was using the characters and diving into their heads, so more of a reflection piece. Anyway, I know a few. This is not going to be an exhaustive list. I'll warn you about that.
No worries.
In advance. But before I interrupt, Donald, I know you wanted to talk about one more thing.
Of course. No, I did leave a segue for you to go, I guess, or a jumping off point, I guess, for you, so that's fine.
No, well, I'll take care of it when I get to my section. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, okay, fine. I'll take that back, then, that jumping off point. Okay. Okay. But one more genre of fanfic that I wanted to write about in particular, comedy fics. These are stories that put canon characters in far funnier situations than their original works, and they're often in script format or more wacky prose.
Sure.
I remember I had fun memories about writing these a few years back. Well, not a few years back. Many years back.
Yeah.
Mostly for Bionicle. My favorite was Nadiki and Kreka's Court of Law, which had the two Bionicle characters, Nadiki and Kreka, be judge, jury, and lawyer for some reason. Various cases.
As opposed to executioner, yeah.
Basically. Various cases pertain to other Bionicle characters. It was pretty goofy, but there were so many running jokes in the you and I still quote to this day.
Yep. There are a few.
That's my job, for one.
Yeah, and you also used that characterization when you made games about Bionicle. So
yes, I did. Fond memories. I'm just reverting back to childhood thoughts right now. Give me a moment. I'm reflecting. Okay, okay, it's gone. Okay. Okay. Anyways, I've also written more serious Bionicle fanfics as well as some other stuff. And in fact, my story idea that continues to remain mysterious and unexplained, Wildlife of Tomorrow, started off as fanfiction of an Animal Planet documentary, The Future is Wild, before I split off into its own thing. I don't know if you knew that.
Nice. I honestly couldn't recall that because I remember the very original version of.
Well, it was even before that.
Wildlife of Tomorrow. Oh, it was before that.
Yeah,
okay.
So you probably wouldn't know. Yeah, it was before.
No, I wouldn't have known because you only showed me the one that had the really, really corny title that was
Future
before
World,
you developed,
which is so original.
Before you developed, which you developed the character. You developed the characters after that, anyways.
Yes.
But, I mean, worth mentioning, we did talk about this when we were doing ancillary stuff. So when you change media, it can also be fan-derived.
Right.
So, like, Donald making a game related to Bionicle
Yes.
is a fanfic in its own way.
In its own
you know,
way,
if it
yeah.
comes up with in its own way, obviously it's not a full-fledged story the same way as you'd read on your tablet or from a book or magazine, whatever.
Right.
But
I
it
guess
still works.
we kind of talked about this in ancillary materials, that particular episode.
Yeah. Oh, whatever it was it 33 or something?
I don't remember, but you can find it by that title. Hey, I'm just imagining, if we ever do get that studio where I have the
We're going to have
buttons,
to use the ding button self.
I'm going to do it so much, because normally I'm like, oh, I have to edit in, but this time I'll be like, nope, all the cheap plugs, just hammer them out.
You know, for all your complaints about the editing process, you're the one who puts more of these in than I do anymore. Yeah. Like, I did enjoy doing it, but, like...
Yeah, I know. Well, I don't know, I just... I'm a bit of a,
all right,
I'm a bit of a masochist, let me just say. I have a lot of self-esteem issues, and I like to take them out on myself as a way to punish myself. This got real for a second.
It's got so deep. Some fanfiction can be.
Yes.
I'd like to say that fanfiction, though, starts with a very simple question. What if?
Although I do
with
think...
the blank following, inspiring the writer to make something with
I mean, to be fair, almost all stories start that way. But fanfics especially, yes.
Well, okay, I mean... You might find that as a basis for a real story that's not based on a prior property, but like if you're looking at a property and you want to do something differently,
right.
That's your journey.
Right, exactly. No, that makes sense.
It's the ultimate wish fulfillment writing. You have all the ideas and development of characters that you adore without spending all that time building them into fully realized creations.
Right.
Because they already are. As such, the biggest style I want to bring up for consideration here is the alternate continuity thing.
Right, yeah, exactly.
It resembles what everyone who's taken in this world before knows, except for a key difference, or some, and you get to throw a wrench of your own choosing to match your creative impetus. This type of writing is where I wager 80%, if not more, of writers linger for their quote-unquote careers, right. So it's also reasonably risk-free.
Exactly.
Where do you all get all self-insert wish fulfillment characters? In this kind of story.
Oh, yes.
Your only critic is your head canon. In fact, it would be a travesty if you didn't make this the correct way, and that's the germ right there.
Right.
Other potential types include, but certainly not limited to, new conflict, same cast.
Right.
Replacement character, whether it's a self-insert or not. Same cast, different era. Of course, sequel or prequels. And very in-depth summaries of all the alterations.
Right.
Hi, buddy. Hope you're listening.
I mean, to be fair, those were original works that he had done. They were...
Yeah.
You just like to drag him on, and you just like to get on his case whenever you can, at every opportunity.
Well, no, I don't like dragging it. I don't like dragging him through the mud because obviously you're right. It was not. But like, what? Okay, so let's have this out because we're talking about fan fiction. What do you think is alternate history fan fiction?
Those were alternate history is not fan fiction. No, because you're the one who deciding the history. Because like, if that was fan fiction, then like any story that takes place in the real world at all is fan fiction of real life.
I don't know. Like, my take on it is this, that, you know, because he is, the writer is choosing what to do, where to change history, like, I think it's a fan fiction. Obviously, real life is not fiction. But
history is obviously fiction,
doctoring...
right? Yes, exactly. It's all conspiracy.
No, I'm not saying that history is fiction, but I'm saying that altering history makes it fictional.
I mean, you've blown my mind here.
Historical fiction happens to be one of my favorite genres.
Yes.
So, you know, I'm not trying to say this like it's a bad thing, but you know,
okay,
it's fiction.
You
might not necessarily be a fan, and that's why you changed the history.
Okay, you know, I have read that the original fanfic actually dates back to Julius Caesar, who would write his own stories about Hercules.
Didn't know that.
That's one thing I remember reading once. So I guess if you're taking characters that were like even historical domain characters and writing your own stories of them, I guess it could be considered fan fiction. I don't know.
I just figured it was a question worth considering. But moving on to our next question here. What are the benefits of writing such a fanfic like this rather than an original story?
Well, there's a lot, I think. It removes a lot of the heavy work of coming up with a new idea, a new setting, new characters, and all those other intense creative endeavors. It allows writers to focus purely on plot and narrative drama. Not everyone has the time or energy to start from scratch. Sometimes writers just want to tell a story right away without having to worry about setting everything else up. Like, one of the reasons I've always loved writing sequels to my works is that I don't have to worry about introducing the world or most of the characters beyond a couple of paragraphs to catch up readers. I can focus purely on using the elements I've already set in place in a new way. In a new story, with characters in a setting I already know. It's so much easier for me to write sequels to works I've completed rather than first installments because of this, and continuation fanfiction is much the same, or fanfiction in general, just skipping the step of writing an original story by leaving it to the original creator. So,
I mean, something that you mentioned as well, we've actually advocated for this way back once upon a time. Like, I believe it was trying to balance for like fight scenes and stuff. Like, maybe we were talking about cinematic scenes. It might have been.
Oh yeah, I remember that one. Forgot which
that we
episode.
said.
That's okay.
That we said, if you need practice, do this with some established characters, and that way you can avoid, having to come up with all the terms of engagement. Right. So, with this, you don't have to set all the terms of engagement. A lot of them are already set for you, which does simplify your process.
Right.
So,
what about you though? What do you think the benefits are?
Yeah. First and foremost, I think it's inspired by something you want to imitate. So you're taking what you already like rather than trying to invent something other people will.
Right, exactly.
There's no guarantee that they'll like it just because you poured your heart and soul out into it, right?
Right, exactly.
It removes most of the pressure that your story has to land right from the jump because fellow fans are drawn in by whatever property you're tagging rather than your name being on it.
Right.
At least as you start out. Eventually, if you become successful enough that your name
one day
is considered by that community as a decent writer, then they might come just for you, even if they're not interested
I really
in a
hope
particular version.
That people don't just assume that everything that Matthew Donald writes will be dinosaur-related, because that seems to be the vibe I've given of myself as, I'm the dinosaur writer! So...
The dinosaur whisperer.
Yeah.
But as you start out, that can change as you progress through your career. It's a great sandbox for your writing style, and you have the buffer of a character that someone already likes.
Right, exactly.
I firmly believe that this type of fiction is the first creative product for most new writers.
Most, yes.
It requires next to no setup on your part. The structure is already in place, which leaves you room to build, and the lower pressure removes a lot of the risk inherent in opening up your ideas for other people.
Right.
You can evolve your and other people's favorite characters as much or as little as you want, from the cameo to a main role, because, let's be honest, the biggest reason you write these stories is to play with those characters, right?
Right. Yeah, that's the nice thing about fanfics, though. You just can take other characters and be like, what do I want to do with them? So it's great.
And that's why I go on about, comic books in general, because the original creators of these fun superhero characters, whether they're enduring, popular, or just, flash in the pan, is that once somebody else gets their hands on them, they can tell stories that the creator might not have considered.
Right. Well, one of my favorite ones of that is, back in the 40s and early on, Bucky was just Captain America's friend. Bucky Barnes was just his friend.
Yep.
That died, and for a while he, along with Uncle Ben and who was the other one? And
Gwen Stacy, I think it was.
Well, yeah, they're like, these are the characters
that can't be revived. They have to die.
But, of course, 2 out of 3 of them have been revived.
Well, depending on how far you look, because there are universes where Ben never died, so there's that too.
I guess that's true. Okay, then all 3 of them in a way.
In a way. I mean, obviously not necessarily
because
resurrection.
The direction that... Was it Ed Brubaker? Is that his name?
Ed Brubaker. Yeah, I think so.
He was like, okay, I'm going to bring Bucky back and make him this new character that's been brainwashed by Hydra as the Winter Soldier. And that is absolutely not the direction I'm assuming that the original creators of Bucky had intended. But it's a really
No,
cool
but what a
thing to
heck
do
of a
with that
story.
character and make it a personal motivator for Captain America. So
True. And, of course, that also opened up a couple more stories, small spoilers for the comics, that Bucky did eventually grab the shield and become Captain America for a time, and it was kind of a redemption for what he did as the Winter Soldier, which wouldn't have happened if nobody brought him back to become the Winter Soldier.
Right.
So,
exactly.
It works.
Anyway,
I'll try not to keep referencing comic books now that we've already made our points about
I've referenced Bionicle a lot already, so it's fine.
Well, I'm just saying that comic books, obviously, they have that inherent element of you're a fan of this character, and that's why writers flock to, I want to do this project. Otherwise, they'd just say no.
Right. Oh, that's fine.
Anyway,
yes.
Speaking of which, people usually write for themselves.
Right.
But most of the time, it's best to not discount a potential audience for your work.
Exactly.
In the case of fan fiction, this audience is obviously fans of the original work, just like you.
Right.
What are some tips to keep in mind about this?
Well, whatever interested you in the original work that made you a fan of it in the first place probably was what also interested other people. So the most obvious tip is to try and keep that element in your fanfic as well. Although this doesn't always mean the work has to be exactly like the original. Like, on the contrary, it's fun to experiment with new concepts the original couldn't get away with. For instance, say there's a work meant for children, but it has a fan base of older people. In this case, it can be interesting to write a fanfic that's more adult than the original, like with more violence, drama, sex, swearing, or whatever. I've seen this a lot in the Bionicle fandom, and I'm sure you've seen it a lot in the Power Rangers fandom.
You bet your bottom dollar. Power/Rangers. Don't look it up if you're under the age of 17, please.
Well, I guess I'm out then.
No,
I'm a minor,
well,
guys.
I was.
So don't stop thinking those sexual thoughts about me. It's illegal.
Now I was looking at your comment, and I can't think of.
I'm so glad you didn't say anything to that.
I can't think of many things in the Bionicle fandom that reflect that. Like, aside from serious plot points.
Well,
a very mature
they're
subject
not
matter.
super mature, but there's some that
I
are
was gonna say
there's some that have a lot more gore or a lot more intense action in them, or than the story could.
Intense action is not expressly adult friendly.
Yeah,
only,
it's not like they
can
have sex.
Sure,
they're biomechanical creatures.
But instead of just leaving them to their spirit being absorbed by Matanui, you see the masks being taken off and they slowly drain away from life or whatever. I don't know.
Actually, they revealed a couple years after Bionicle ended, they revealed one of the big mysteries of the universe.
And everything. 42.
Well, one of the big secrets, and it has to do with this. The Red Star. You remember the Red Star?
Vaguely. It's been a while.
It was first introduced in the Matanui online game, and then it's been seen at other times. It gave the Toa Naika their powers. Lightning came down from it, powered by Matanui, that made them the Toa Naika. But its main purpose actually is to when a character dies, it makes it's like a factory in there, like an automated factory that takes those parts and reassembles them into a new being. Not necessarily the same person, but
right, a new being.
So, I remember one of the long-time questions of Bionicle was okay, they don't reproduce, but they can die. Doesn't that mean eventually they'll run out? But nope. That's what the Red Star is for.
Not with the Red Star, yeah.
I thought that was kind of a cool idea.
Very nice. Yeah.
Anyways.
Sorry, I took it to a tangent, didn't I?
I was the one who brought that up, but I hope...
Well, you brought that up only because I asked about what in the Bionicle fandom. No, that wasn't. That was your tangent. You're right.
Okay, well, I hope listeners are entertained by Bionicle.
Well, if they're not, then they won't be having as much fun with the rest of the set. But we'll see what happens.
We'll talk about something mainstream, I guess.
I guess
we'll stop being hipsters.
Well, I mean, Power Rangers is still going. Is that really considered a hipster franchise?
I guess that's true.
I'm kidding. Anyway, you have one last note on here about the limitations.
Yes, basically, don't feel restricted by the limitations of the original work when writing your fanfic, but also don't discount what made the original work appealing to begin with. Find that balance. So,
yeah, if there's a way to stay true to the elements that already exist, then you should try.
Mm-hmm.
Wholesale changes silly.
Right.
I am going to piggyback on Donald here, actually, particularly when it comes to established characters.
Right.
You toy with something people already fell for at your own risk. If you feel like changing something, make it one notable thing, or smaller minor differences, not wholesale personality shifts to serve your aims. You will always have someone mad at you for how you handled character X, plot Y that previously happened in canon and impacts your tale, or setting Z if that's what you alter. Inevitably, we write for people who share this common interest if we pour our soul into continuation fics.
Right.
Keep in mind that as you get older, so does the main audience you're able to relate with, and give them that due respect.
Right.
Treat the material with respect.
Yes.
This is why so many PR fics involve adulter material, because the fans raised on it grew up into adults that still wanted it to feel serious to them and found something lacking in the source.
Right, exactly.
It's all based on a what if, right?
Right.
So make sure yours is compelling.
Indeed.
Give them a reason to follow you along your adventure by honoring what they appreciated at the beginning.
Indeed. Well, I think that covers a lot of what we need to say about continuation fics. Obviously, there's more to talk about, but a lot of it's kind of redundant. It's like, we don't really need to give tips, because fanfic writers, they want to do what they want, and that's fine. We should encourage that, but these are just things to kind of like keep in mind, sort of? I don't know. Right,
like giving a tipperoonie about fan fiction is entirely false, because fan fiction is the hub of personal preference.
Right.
So,
exactly.
Our personal preference won't necessarily align with yours. If they do, then hey, feather in our cap. But it's your choice. And you have executive control if you decide to go out and do this. Now, keep in mind, some fanfics that you want to write, you might not legally be able to use the characters.
Well, that's why they're fanfics that aren't going to be published, because it's okay to write them and use them.
So there is,
as long as you don't make money off of it. So.
Yep. But if you have anything you'd like to add about continuation fics, or if there's some question you have that we could answer, please let us know.
Yes.
If you want to get in touch with us, you can do that very easily. You can use your own email system, or go to Donald's professional site, MatthewDonaldCreator.com, using the contact page.
Yes, you can. And if you want to use your own email system, you contact us. It's at mattd with 2 T's at MatthewDonaldCreator.com. The link will be in the description. So, if you want to follow me, if you want to follow me personally, you can follow me at MatthewDonaldCreator on Facebook, at MatthewDonald64 on Twitter, and MatthewDonald64 on Instagram. Why 64? Because over the years, I've collected 64 snails out of my garden, and I've gotten 64 different ailments from ingesting snail slime as a result. Now, you might ask, why do I ingest the slime after catching a snail? For science? I have some weird hobbies, okay? Leave me alone.
Yeah, all right.
And I totally have a garden, too. It's very well taken care of.
Very well.
I'm quite the horticulturist.
Sure, we'll go with that. Right. Anyways.
I have quirks. I mean, that's not a lie.
You have quirks. I think that's what you said. You cut out right on that point. But anyways,
I do indeed have quirks.
All right. So listeners, thanks for joining us on our start of our new set about fan fiction. We'll be back next week with more. But until then, keep writing, listeners. We love to have you come back.
I'm Matt Donald.
And I'm Matt David, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.
See ya.